Shadow of the Erdtree is a gargantuan expansion that nearly doubles the amount of content in Elden Ring. I've been pouring dozens of my human hours into exploring every inch of the new region, falling in love with more of the new weapons than I could possibly main, and experimenting with mountains of new, weird items. So I'm going to review this expansion by highlighting the new, unusual, and most interesting mechanics that could go easily missed or underutilized. I'm Alex, and these are 10 things that you maybe didn't know were possible in Shadow of the Erdtree. By the way, I will not be showing any major boss fights, and will keep my headcanon to myself. No story stuff whatsoever. Okay, first, the new Perfume Bottle weapon type is one of the most satisfying to wield and has some unique synergies. These come in a variety of flavors, like green apple, orange, lemon lime, and madness, to name a few. However, if you put a different bottle type in your other hand, your offhand attack will hit with both effects at the same time, like inflicting both poison and madness, green apple despair, or lightning and fire, lemon lime arson. The jump attack with this combo is surprisingly strong, and these mixtures are overall pretty potent. You can also find different Ashes of War for the perfume bottles, and those skills gain the properties of whichever bottle or bottles you have equipped. Here you can see the offhand bottle using lightning to ignite those outgoing flames. Two-handing, two-fisting a single bottle, though, will give you access to some really strong multi-hit AoE attacks. The sprinting heavy attack is a personal favorite, since its damage effect lingers along your sides as you run and ends with a blast right in front of you. You can also move around during this attack, and if you arc yourself perfectly around the target, you can multi-hit with this one attack for extra styly bonus damage. Easier when you're not locked on. Something else that ties in perfectly with the fire-based bottles is the new oil-soaked tier that you can equip to your flask. That'll make your body all covered in slippery oil, which will automatically coat that onto nearby enemies. That debuff on the target, along with other fire damage modifiers, can make for a deadly concoction. Fire can be the solution to many of life's problems, and 60% of the time it works every time. Some of the new weapons have extra attack modifiers, like tapping dodge while holding the heavy attack button. Here, that changes the Great Katana's forward lunge into an evasive backslash. Instead of advancing while throwing these claws, you can instead jump backwards and throw them by tapping dodge during the charged heavy attack. Same goes for the perfume bottles, which lets you cancel out of a heavy attack to spray the effect while jumping backwards. It's useful that more weapons have access to this combat mechanic, since it lets you make quick adjustments to your moveset in response to what the enemy is doing. In the new region, keep an eye out for these dudes with sparkling pots on their head. They will quickly vanish if you don't dispatch them in time, but if you do, they'll drop a Erdtree fragment. Everywhere in this expansion you'll be finding jars, pots, bowls, buckets, bins, ziplocks, receptacles. You know what? New title idea. Yeah, I like that. I prefer that. Anyways, Erdtree fragments and revered spirit ashes are two new items that can further bolster your character while they're in the expansion. Like here, you can see my character's stats while on the original map on the left, and the amplified stats I've earned in the expansion on the right highlighted yellow. There's new melee weapons that can also cast spells, like the Carrion Sorcery Sword. This has access to a string of basic attacks like normal, but the heavy attack button is replaced with the ability to cast. So this one weapon could also hit like a greatsword, a hammer, or a bow, however you look at it. This also works well on horseback, being able to easily attack or cast spells without needing to swap hands. Pair this with a shield, and that gives you access to melee attacks, a block, and spell casting like a true warrior mage, without having to switch anything around in the middle of combat. Another option, if you prefer using a staff or seal in your main hand, is to pair it with the new thrusting shield. One button holds up a block, but the other has a full attack moveset, just like a traditional melee weapon. The outgoing hits also have a few frames of active block, which can mitigate incoming damage during their animation. Casting, blocking, and attacking is just as seamless as the last setup, just achieved a little bit differently. You'll find a few of these big fire dudes around the map, which are tricky to take down until you understand what to do. Get in close and continually attack their legs while double jumping with your horse to evade those fire stomps. Eventually your pedicure will knock them down, and then you can perform a critical hit on their face plate thing. If one of them has armored toes though, you'll have to find a different solution. You can throw the new Hefty Pot item into their heads to deal some damage, specifically the Hefty Furnace Pot being the most effective. Another option is to lock onto their face and chip away with spells or arrows from the ground. Some of the new weapons come imbued with elemental properties like fire, but can also be further imbued with weapon coatings to amplify the effect, like the Fire Knight's short sword. However, if you apply an Ash of War that grants a further fire enhancement, you won't be able to apply a traditional weapon coating. But with the Flaming Strike skill, you can input a heavy attack right after casting it, which will bathe the weapon in those glorious flames to amplify the fire damage even higher. This also works similarly with the Flame Spear skill, applying fire to your weapon after you use it. Combine that with the Oil Soaked Tear I mentioned before and some other elemental buffs to create something that will melt enemies. In this expansion, it doesn't have the big ding-dong walker things, which are used to duplicate boss remains, but you can find these coffins in the new area that function exactly the same. If you don't need it right then, make sure to at least mark these coffins on your map for later. Another new weapon type are the Throwing Blades, which give you a full melee moveset but with the range of a throwable. These really change the feel of the gameplay and are well suited for a playstyle that prefers staying back a little further. Even if you don't make these your main weapon, it is a strong viable option now to use these in your offhand. This lets you supplement your main weapon with quick-hitting throwable daggers in your offhand. That's an infinite use, free range projectile for your build. You can also find the Smithing Talisman, which increases the potency of those throwing weapons. There's other new weapon classes I haven't mentioned yet, like the ironically named Light Greatsword. These have a really flowy moveset and Ashes of War that give it different stances. The hand-to-hand type is a quick assault of punches and kicks, and I found it to be pretty effective at staggering. These feel like a totally different combat system. The backhand blades have your character holding swords the cool upside-down way. These and some other weapons can also be thrown with their heavy attack. The Beast Claws let you bear, with a moveset that lunges you forward on all fours with quick paw swipes. The Great Katana is like a katana, but with extra greatness. Slower to swing, but harder to hit, with some different stances you can get for their weapon skills. There's also all kinds of new old weapon types with altered movesets, like the Swift Spear chaining in extra hits with each input, or putting this dagger into your offhand to change the entire moveset of your equipped piercing sword. And real quick, make sure to jump into the options menu and enable Mark New Items and Show Recent Items tab. Then you'll get this new inventory tab that shows everything you've picked up in order of most recent. With hundreds of new things in this expansion, this was surprisingly useful for quickly inspecting all the new stuff. Okay, final thoughts. Here we go. Shadow of the Erdtree is vastly larger in scope than I initially expected. I honestly don't know how From Software creates the time to make all this, because there's not just 2 or 3 standout epic areas, there's like 8, 9, maybe 10 that will blow your mind. Easily the best expansion to drop since the Old Hunters, and overall I would gladly give Shadow of the Erdtree a strong 5 out of 5. A masterwork of game design, crammed with all the coolest stuff your character is going to love. Before I close this out though, I want to know what character build you're bringing into this. I brought in a high-dex, high-intelligence katana spellcaster, but I have to admit, all the new faith-based weapons and spells I kept finding did make me a little jelly of faith users. Okay, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching everyone, I'm Alex, and I'll see you next time.